Spatial, quarantine time, excellent.
I'm Anthony Crimmins.
And I'm Kyle Saunders, and this is the Stickstar Space Show.
That's right, Kyle. This is the Stickstar Space Show, and we're here today with Adam Stewart, assistant coach, Denison University. Adam, Coach Stewart, how are we doing today?
We're doing good, all things considering. Hanging in there, living the dream here in Granville, Ohio.
How is the Stewart clan holding up there in Granville, Ohio, right now? What's the temperature like up there? Is it hot, or how are we doing?
No, it snowed like 2 days ago. And the day before that, I was in shorts and flip flops. So it's currently a balmy like 46 with a solid drizzle. Very gray. So, it's kind of the weather you'd expect given the times that we're currently in. But everyone here's doing well. We've transferred fully to the remote learning for a 4-year-old, a 6-year-old, and an 8-year-old. So it's been interesting, but I can't say enough about, the teachers that my kids have and just the way the school has been organized. It's been remarkable, to be honest with you, especially considering they did it with like 48 hours notice. But it's been good for me. I say this kind of selfishly, but having young kids, but that are old enough to kind of understand how weird this is. It's been a great perspective piece. Obviously, as coaches, we've gone through a lot. As a small business operator, we've gone through a lot. But there is a piece of it that has been it's been grounding to be at home and to be able to talk through this and work through this with my kids. So we're hanging in there. It's as good as we can make it.
I hear you. Quarantine's real. That's my dog going at the Amazon guy.
Yeah.
That's how it is.
That's how it works.
Textfully getting after him.
Yeah. What's everyday life been like in Ohio right now? Are people generally adhering to the guidelines, or is it just kind of the normal existence? Where do you guys fall in the spectrum?
I would say that it's been pretty awesome to see how buttoned up Ohio. I say Ohio as a whole, but really, I mean, I can refer more to Central Ohio. But the people have been adhering to it. We were ahead of a lot of states with regards to closing stuff down. It all started what feels like, I almost said months ago, but it all started with we shut down the Arnold Classic, which is a huge event here in Columbus, weightlifting event with obviously Arnold Schwarzenegger and Rogue Fitness. And it's a multi-million-dollar event for the city. And we shut that down before we had a single case, a confirmed case. And, it came with, as most big decisions come with, a very, vocal people opposing it, but it's proven to be, as aggressive as we were up front, I think, and as diligent as people have been for the most part. I think it's put us in a position to look at rolling back into some semblance of normal on May 1st. Living here in Granville, in the village where it's, very small, very tight-knit community. Everybody's been really good about it. Not only obviously with the distancing and, you're seeing more and more masks, but I think one of the reasons you're seeing that is people are actually becoming more and more comfortable being outside. And it's been a good thing to see. And just being a part of a community that's there to support one another has been pretty cool. So it's all in all, each day is I couldn't pick a better place to be if I was going to be, stuck like we are.
Right. We just got slapped with the masks today. I think it's a essential ordinance. It's going in tonight. Being a glasses guy, I hate the mask because it's constantly a battle of fogging. So I was walking through Costco today without my glasses on, just kind of, work my way down one side of the aisle and then work my way down the other side because it's just kind of tough out there without the glasses on.
The struggle is real.
Yeah, it's a serious trade-off. The fogging I'm in versus not fogging. So, yeah, mass.
Yeah, Coach, I think it's interesting. We were just talking about this on another episode of the Space Show, this was a week or two ago, about how Dallas and Texas in general was kind of, sounds like in the same boat, or we share the same feelings that you do about Ohio and how they've been on top of this thing from kind of the jump point and canceled the weightlifting deal that you're talking about in Columbus. And Texas, it was the Houston Rodeo, was one of the first big ones to go. Obviously South by Southwest and Austin, like massive international film, arts, music, tech, gaming conference. And then here in Dallas, the St. Patrick's Day parade and all of the activities surrounding St. Patrick's Day. Looking back at it, there were a lot of voices, like you said, up there, but turns out, man, were those the right decisions. So that's also, that's good to hear. That's where we're at. I was just kind of curious, for the people watching, could you just kind of tell us your background at Denison? And know you played there and kind of what your current role is with the program now.
Sure. So my relationship with the college started 24 years ago. In 96, I started getting recruited by Coach Caravana, who is still there, who I was lucky enough to play for, and then obviously have coached with. This would have been my eighth season on staff. But I played there. I graduated in 2003. And when I graduated, I always stayed connected to the program. I had a really good relationship with Coach Caravana, which I still do to this day. He lives like 5 blocks from me. And it's one where when I left, I kind of always knew that I'd find my way back. I don't know that I knew that I would find my way back, to living a block off campus. But in 2009, I came back as an assistant coach, the top assistant, for 2009, 10, 11, and 12. And then when we started growing our family, Division III assistant coaching wasn't conducive to trying to also manage small children and the challenges that come with that. So I stepped away from coaching for a couple of years, and then I came back in 2000. What would that have been? 17. Yeah, in 2017, and have been back with the staff ever since. I primarily work on the offensive side of the ball. I've been either the offensive coordinator or co-offensive coordinator and run the extra man unit in those 8 seasons. And that first year back was a year we made it back to the Final Four. So it's been a good run. This, one of the bittersweet things about this was, we had a team this year primed for another one of those runs. But I hate to say it, there's a lot of programs out there in the same boat. So kind of the 30-second snapshot of my connection to the college.
Right. And with such an unexpected stop to, like you said, a very promising season, don't want this to be too much doom and gloom, but I think it is worth looking into, and just for the people out there, about how you guys are going about leading your program. But can you walk us through kind of the final 24 hours or last couple days of the season when you guys may have heard that this was coming, and then, how you guys inform your team and just kind of how that all went down?
Sure. It was probably the craziest 72-hour stretch that I can remember, solely from the standpoint of how fluid the situation was. With social media being what it is, we were literally finding out almost in real time through, following NCAA on Twitter and things like that So I'll say the last couple days, over about a 2.5 day span, it started with well, maybe our spring break, the first half of our spring break trip, which was going to be an event held at Stevenson University, the Mustang Classic, which is, I think it's 12 teams and like 8 of us were in the top 15 of the country. And it was like, maybe that's going to get postponed, or we're going to have to change our travel plans. And fast forward another 12 hours, we weren't going on that trip, but we were going to go to the back half of spring break, which was going to be in the Northern Virginia area. And then fast forward 12 hours, and that was done. And we were then at a point where it was like, okay, are we going to basically quarantine spring athletes on campus for basically a 2-week window, with the thought that once the storm passes, we'll come back and have our conference schedule. And while we were in the meeting discussing that with an associate AD, Twitter, I was refreshing Twitter sitting there while this is being talked about, and the NCAA announced the cancellation of the spring season. And so, I mean, in real time, you're watching guys be told like that national title we talked about competing for isn't happening. So when you talk, like, how did you tell the guys? Like, you didn't really tell the guys. Like, the internet told the guys. And I heard Andy Shea actually talking about this. A similar thing happened with how the Ivy League canceled their season. And I know that there were a handful of players, I think it was at Yale, because he was talking about, but that found out literally on their phones, like walking into practice or walking into the locker room after practice. And so, it was kind of in that moment where as a coach, as a leader, as someone that just cares about these dudes a lot, you're like trying to improvise on the fly. And the approach we took really in the moment was not to improvise on the fly and just let it be raw. And, everybody felt what they felt. And I mean, at that point, there weren't a lot of tears. It was just, people were mad. Because at the time, again, like we talked about, like it felt like the NCAA was just jumping the gun, and nobody really understood, well, why wouldn't they postpone instead of canceling and all this? And so we were fortunate to have one last day of practice. We did a inter squad red white scrimmage, and really just let the guys, especially the senior, like be on the field together one more time. We had a catered meal on campus afterwards, kind of had an informal banquet, I mean, for lack of a better term. And, that was, I mean, you're hugging guys, and that's the last time, I mean, we saw them. And right now it feels like that was, 3 months ago. But it was incredibly fluid. It was incredibly emotional. And, I mean, I will say that it challenged every bit of our staff's ability to lead. It was because you were also fighting your own personal feelings of how it was handled. So yeah, it was tough. And, it's something that when you lose a game and you lose an NCAA tournament game in overtime, you had control over it. It's sad that it's over, but you were there. Like, you had a chance to make a play. In this case, like, nobody had a chance to make a play. And I think that's probably the toughest part of it for all of us.
Yeah, I imagine making the next play in that time was, like you said, just unbelievably difficult to do. And I think it's awesome how you guys just kind of let it be, and instead of improvising, just let the emotions be raw there, because they had to be plentiful.
Yeah, it was, it sounds super cliche, but walk off the field. So when we did the red white scrimmage, we broadcast it so that all of the families could watch the red white scrimmage, especially the senior families who literally were now watching their kids play for the last time, which as a parent, it's hard to wrap your head around that. But I actually went up in the press box and did the broadcast for the game. Just with the kind of thought was, if those were my kids playing, I wouldn't want to just watch a muted live stream. Like, I would want someone kind of telling the story. And it was a really therapeutic thing for me. But coming down out of the press box and onto the field is when you really saw the raw emotion come out, because, and not just from seniors, but like this was a group of guys that was different than other teams I've coached, and you could see the realization that this was it, set in, and it was legitimately like watching a wave crashing, like kind of coming towards you. So it was, it was tough. At the same time, it's an experience that, we're all going to share for the rest of our lives. And, 30 years from now, if you ask me what I was feeling walking on that field on that day, like I'll be able to tell you without any loss of memory.
Yeah, that it's definitely interesting. I would say the only thing that kind of compares, like for me, was when like the World Trade Center happened, and we were all at Butler, and it was my freshman year, and we had this meeting because we had a ton of guys from New York City, and it was just such a real emotional like experience that you just won't ever forget it. I can't imagine, because I'm not coaching during the spring right now, but it's just it's an unbelievable circumstance. So
Yeah, and one of the things that made it hard too was the idea that, and I've talked about this with a bunch of coaches, is the idea that in order to like best facilitate moving everyone forward, we all have to go away and kind of, and you literally, when we have to go quarantine, like, so we had this emotional thing, and again, it was horrible. And in the exact same moment, we knew that the exact right thing to do was to tell these guys, like, literally pack your stuff up, get in your car and go home.
right.
And it's it just contradicts every emotion you have as an empathetic human being to say, like, the best thing I can do for you is to tell you to go away.
Right.
So that's been, with technology like this, like, I've been on calls with our seniors, with our leadership council, stuff like that. And if this technology didn't exist, I'd be going crazy, honestly. Like,
Yeah.
it's at least allowing some sort of interaction. And I know that, 98% of the coaches you could talk to would say the same thing, is like, we miss being on the field and competing and X's and O's and all that. But like, we really just miss being around a group of other like-minded people.
So is this something you guys are taking advantage of with your program right now? Are you guys having meetings? Like what all are you guys doing with your squad during this disconnected pause that we're in?
Sure. So kind of right out of the gate, the first couple weeks, we let everybody, again, just kind of settle into whatever they were settling into. I think one of the things we also forget about is everybody comes from different family situations. So there are people, and luckily I can say that I don't think this is the case with any of our players, knowing all of our families, but there are people that don't want to be quarantined at home. And then there are also people that you're asking them to quarantine at home, and you're asking them to immediately transition over to this remote learning. It might not be how they learn. The actual act of going to class is what gets them through. And so you have a lot of layers to this that we were kind of letting play out and just being there in a passive supporting role. Clearly if they needed anything, but we weren't going to be pushing anything on them. And then over the last, I would say 2 weeks, we've started to kind of re-engage the conversations with, especially with our leadership council, which is a group of guys from each grade level that have been selected by their peers as well as the staff. And we've started the conversations with them about, okay, what does this look like moving forward? And not even on the field, but like, we could be in a position where we're trying to acclimate and engage incoming first years, but what if we're not on campus? Let's talk about that now. Let's not wait until, August 15th to figure that out. So the way we're really using this technology and this time is to be as forward thinking as possible, so that, we have plans in place for whichever scenario kind of pops up. And, and our guys have been awesome about it. I was on a call last night with all of our seniors, and, with them, the conversation is dudes in the portal, trying to figure out what's next. And you get off that call and you have a call with your leadership council about, what if we're not on campus, September 1st. So there's, again, there's so many moving pieces and it's so fluid. But I think that the ability to connect with people, even face to face like this, gives some real world connection to it, better than email or text or stuff like that. So
yeah, it's just a pretty unbelievable, circumstance. We're all planners, and it's hard to, you can't plan. It's like planning on quicksand. You're just, you have to think about all of these different iterations and what it could be like. But at the end of the day, you just have to kind of be patient as much as you can be.
Right.
But I think it's probably really important that you guys are having all of those talks, and, that sounds all good. Kyle, what do you think?
Yeah, kind of switching gears. Like I said, we don't want this whole thing to be kind of doom and gloom, but I appreciate the insight into all the emotions. That's really what I was curious about, is kind of the leadership roles that you guys were taking and how it all kind of went down. I'm also not coaching in the spring right now, save for a couple days volunteering with 2 different programs. And, I miss that a lot. So I can only imagine what it's like to be, had I been on a team at games, going through the whole off season, all of that.
Building.
Building and being in the process and not being able to see that through to the finality of whatever the end of the season might be.
Sure.
But kind of want to get into the recruiting landscape a little bit, just to kind of get your thoughts on, the summer and beyond. And it may be different for you guys, but, with the NCAA granting another year of eligibility to guys that played this spring, I'm curious what impact like that decision from the NCAA is going to have on your program. And if, what guys are coming back, does it make financial sense? Everything that goes into kind of that decision for your guys that have been granted another year of eligibility.
Sure. I think you hit the nail on the head there, which is the one thing that isn't necessarily sexy to talk about, but is the big thing, which is the financial side of it. Especially at a place like Denison, we're not giving out full ride athletic scholarships. So the 2 ways that it impacts us specifically, and then I'll kind of share on the broader sense is, obviously we have seniors that will be graduating this spring that are exploring 5th year, grad options. They were planning on going to grad school, so now it's going to go to grad school and get 1 more year of play in. What we're experiencing with them and kind of helping them navigate those waters is the uncertainty from those programs that they're trying to go to as they navigate exactly what you talked about, which is, which one of their guys are coming back, who's leaving, how much money do we have, is our athletic department going to in the fall? Like it's, again, it's hard, and I've been saying it since the start, like you got to follow the money. And that's ultimately what is going to drive all of this. And it's going to be, schools that have it, that can spend it. You're going to see securing guys more. For a place like us, we exist on the transfer portal solely from the standpoint of, we keep an eye out for guys that we recruited really hard, that might have gone, to test the Division I waters, let's say, and it's not their thing and they're back in the portal. So, are we going to reach out to them because we have a need in their area? I think we'll see. We haven't seen a ton of that so far, but I still think it's early in the game. I think we'll see a little bit more of that. For our guys that are returning, on the Division III level, I really think you're just going to see guys kind of play out their typical careers. So it'll end up being, guys involved in this will end up with like 3 2/3 years playing lacrosse. You'll have a handful of guys that leverage the extra year, but I don't think it's going to be as common as you think. And one of the reasons, and this was an interesting point brought up to me a couple of days ago, is for guys that, especially the graduating seniors at all levels, D1, D2, it doesn't matter. If you have a job lined up that is still going to pay you, you are staying and taking that job solely because you don't want to take the risk of going to grad school, doing this thing, playing lacrosse one more year because it feels good, and then you have no idea what the job market looks like a year from now. So, I think that the recruiting landscape for us is, we're in a wait and see what these summer events look like. I think we're going to see a huge consolidation, and we're going to have to pick and choose wisely, where we go. Because you could have, 6 events happening the same weekend. And, we have a staff that, we can get to a number of them. We can't get to all of them. And so, I think from a recruiting standpoint, the consolidation's big. And I think the fall and winter prospect days on specific campuses are going to be big. Because I think that it's an opportunity for schools to be very, very selective in who they want to look at because they missed them this summer. So I think if I was a kid out there wanting to be seen, I would start really looking at my list of schools I was interested in and paying attention to if they're offering prospect days, kind of once the dust settles.
Right. Well, I think that all makes a tremendous amount of sense, and that's great. Great insight. What do you think this has, like, as far as impact on the 2020 class, specifically, right? Like, these guys pretty much all of them, their high school seasons went away as seniors. Now they're stepping in with their commitment onto campus, kind of behind a lot of dudes that are essentially getting another year. So is there going to be a log jam, do you think, or how do you think that may impact those kids?
I think there could be a log jam, but I don't think it's going to be as bad as people think. I do think that it's program specific, if that makes sense.
Yep.
And I think that, this is the classic example of, if I'm one of those 2020 kids that you're talking about, and, I've committed to a place and I'm concerned about, what does this look like? Those players especially, but also those players' families, because this is an investment, like, they need to be having that conversation with those coaching staffs, and in a very transparent way. Because I think what we're seeing, and a lot of the coaches that I've talked to, they understand the implications here for these kids. And I think that there's going to be far less spin and far more honesty in these conversations. Because again, we don't know. We don't know all the answers, but if I were, let's put it this way, if one of my kids was a 2020 graduate, they'd be the first call I'd be making, would be to that head coach, just to say, can we lay out what this looks like? Because
Sure.
we want to make an informed and educated decision.
Right.
And if you're talking to someone that doesn't want to give you that information, that's lending a lot of insight also.
So, Coach, what are some things that high schoolers, 2021s, 2022 should be doing right now. If they haven't found a home at the next level and they have the desire to play lacrosse in college, obviously there's some on the field and off the field things. Just give us your insight there as well.
Sure. We'll start on the field because I think that's actually a far simpler answer. One of the things, to me is there are ways to look at this as this is horribly challenging. I don't want to be doing this. Or, all right, this is super unique, but there's an opportunity for growth here. And I think what you're going to see, and I mean, as a college coach, I think about this from a recruiting standpoint. You're gonna see kids that take advantage of the opportunity and the time, and kids that don't. And the two things that I would say coming out of this are, one is a kid who wants to be a player at the next level is going to use this opportunity to get in the best shape of his life. There's no reason not to. I joke, like, you can go run, you can do push-ups, you can do, burpees till the sun goes down. Like, you can get in the best shape of your life. And two is you should come out of this with a right and left hand that are indistinguishable from each other. I don't care if you're a long pole. I don't care if you're a face-off kid. I don't care what position you play. You should be able to pass and catch and scoop with both hands. And if I was watching you do it as a college coach evaluating you, I shouldn't be able to tell which hand you are. And that just comes down to, are you willing to get on the wall, throw your AirPods in and get after it, and do the work that other kids aren't willing to do. I mean, that's just, I joke that, like, you look at Steele Stanwyck, and I mean, I would argue, like, he's the most fundamentally sound lacrosse player I've ever watched. And people ask how, and he's like, well, I went in my garage and I had this brick wall and I, did wall ball for hours on end. And, there's plenty of kids these days in that 2021, 2022 group. Like, that sounds boring. Yeah, it is boring. But it wasn't boring when Steele Stanwyck was playing for national titles and winning Twartons at Virginia. So, on the field, I would say get in the best shape of your life and have a right and left that are indistinguishable from each other. Off the field, get your schoolwork done. Again, remote learning is not easy. Every school's handling it differently. Every kid's home situation is different. I get it. But transcripts are still transcripts. So you got to take care of your books. You gotta do everything in your power to come out of this academically at least where you were going into it, if not ahead. From a recruiting standpoint, use this time to really do research. Pull the list of every college that's playing lacrosse. It doesn't matter what division. Really sit down with your parents and, start the conversations around geography, size of school, are fraternities and sororities important to you? What's your family's budget now for college? What colleges fall into all of these boxes? Use this as an opportunity to get organized and to get ahead of the game so that, again, when the curtain lifts and the new normal is presented to us and the next face-off happens, you have a plan in place. You are physically and academically and emotionally ready and equipped to be better than you are now. Because if you take that approach, you are going to be in the minority of kids in your grade across the country, because it's hard to do. I mean, it's just hard to be motivated right now. Like the three of us could admit to that. And, it's hard to wake up and be like, okay, I'm going to go grind today, even if it's for an hour, like, because I could play Xbox. I'm going to grind on my books today. I'm going to research, New England colleges of all different sizes that play lacrosse. Like, sounds terrible, but it's work that needs to be done. And the kids that put in the time and the families that put in the time now in 2021s and 2022s will set themselves up for success compared to those who don't.
Right. So what I think I'm hearing you say is making your school list is important, right? And there's a lot of factors that go into making your school list, especially now. All of the kids should be watching Rocky IV to go ahead and check out what a real intense workout. I mean, that's what I think of. I'm not doing anything like that. I'm trying. I am working out. I brought my pull-up dip bar rack into the house, so I've really made the commitment.
Nice.
Yeah, it's legit. It's like heavy barbell. It's freaking. My wife was like, "Yeah, sure," and I use it so much more now. And she's like, "I think that was a great idea." And I'm like, "Yes."
There you go.
Yeah,
If
so
you
a
can
lot
do
of buy-in.
it, any of them can do it.
Right. So, and exactly. And one of the things that I think is interesting is I feel like this is a time when people should be watching movies with their family. So I've wanted to put together a 6-star movie viewing list, right? There's a lot of, it gets tricky because you really have to be appropriate, right? You
Correct.
have to be appropriate. Parents have to sign off on some of these movies, right? You would have to be able to watch it with your parents. I think that's like a pretty important criteria. But is there one movie that you think is appropriate not that you would watch any inappropriate movies, but that you think, look, chances are, because all the time I quote a movie or reference a movie and the kids just look at me like, what's a Goonie?
Oh yeah. That's a whole nother issue. We got on a bus and to go on a trip this year, and somebody took out, I think it was either Happy Gilmore or Billy Madison. I forget which one. And one of the kids on the bus started talking about how incredible that classic movie was. And it was heartbreaking because in that moment, I was like, man, I am old.
Right.
This happened.
Yeah.
And then I had to inform them that Tommy Boy and Chris Farley and like they don't have comedy like that now. And it's so, I mean, a movie. So it's interesting. On one of my first episodes of my podcast, I asked a coach, I was like, okay, we had this conversation because he has little kids, and we talked about like before bedtime movies and after bedtime movies, really centered around the Disney Plus app, which is electric when it comes to parenting.
Right.
But I would, one of the ones like I haven't watched yet, but every time I see it on Netflix, it's like I want to put it on, but if I do, I know I'm going to watch the whole thing. Is Miracle.
Right.
So Miracle is like, I would probably say that would be one of my top movies in the sports genre that is also fully family friendly. You referenced Rocky, like, I mean, these are classics. I mean, that would be up there. Being a lacrosse guy, like I'm still a huge Field of Dreams guy. But that's, that's just like, you're just going to cry. But yeah, Miracle would be it. Like Miracle is my jam. That's good stuff.
Yeah. Again, I mean, that's pretty much just what we've been working through with Dorothy over here. Just really dialing in my Herb Brooks. The other day she was picking up a knife off of the table, just randomly picking one up. And I just said, just really loud. And she immediately just dropped it and moved backwards. And I was like, all right, it's the training is working.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's definitely worth it. See, that's just something I've really wanted to do forever. But the movie list, I think that Miracle is a good one that you can put on there. No reservations. Everybody can watch that together. That's actually the short that we were going to go with for our Texas United kit this summer. Low-key teaser right there is we're going to wear the whole Miracle uniform for the Texas United uniforms this summer. So
I love it.
If anybody's paying attention, they heard it here first.
And I wear an XL in shorts. Just throwing that out there.
Right. You still do.
Yeah.
The last
my
thing.
goal is at the end of this to wear a large.
Right. We've said, we've been starting to do this space show a little more regularly. We kind of got it going on quarantine, hence our intro music. But what can you get good at in a month, right? What can you accomplish in a month? Kyle spoke to that. There's a lot. There's a lot that you can get done in a month.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
and now longer.
The resources out there, really for anything. I mean, obviously we're talking about lacrosse, but the resources available for anyone to really want to do anything are, virtually endless. When we talk about being on this podcast, I started one 2 weeks ago, and it's funny. I had no idea what I was doing, but you spend a half an hour on the internet, you can be functional. And then it's, for me, especially with a lot of kids that I'm not going to sit here and say you can be great at Call of Duty in a month. Come on. But you talk about lacrosse, if you really think about, 2 hours a day for 30 days, you put in 60 hours of stick work because you don't have all that much else going on. That's a lot of reps. It's a lot. And it's the same thing with schoolwork, with playing a musical instrument, with anything. Anybody that's listening to it, it's not just sports. But it's just that idea of, what are you gonna do with your time that's meaningful? And one of the ways I look at it is, doing interviews like this, doing my own podcast is when you're done with the day, what is it that you did so you don't feel like you wasted the day? Because you get in an environment like this where, you feel trapped, and it's easy, whether you're 15 years old or 40 years old, to have, a day that becomes 3 days, that becomes a week, that you're what have I gotten done? And again, I think that for kids and adults alike, the people that take this as an opportunity to do something new, to take a risk, to explore something that, they wouldn't have done because usually they're running around with their busy lives. Those folks are going to come out of this not only possibly ahead because, they're doing something others aren't, but they're going to come out of it happier because, they've chosen to engage in an opportunity and see it as that, as opposed to, as a negative, and just kind of sitting around waiting for the unknown to be known.
Yeah, I again agree with you, and I think it's so important. You're kind of touching around it, that players, they have to, and adults alike, but specifically with the lacrosse side of it, is they have to self-audit, right? And that's something that I think kids and players today have a tough time with. I can't tell you how many players I've interacted with that they're hey, coach, what can I do to get better? What can I be working on to get better? And, to me, that question should first be internal, right? In the mirror.
Oh, yeah.
Man, if you drop the ball with, your offhand in practice, guess what? If you're a liability catching the ball with your outside hand, the answer is there for you. You just have to kind of think about it in a different way and self-audit, so that when you do put in that stick work, right, you're not just hitting the wall to hit the wall and have some, catharsis from it, but you're actually doing it to improve at something specific, right? So
yeah. One of the things we talk to our guys at Denison all the time about, and we do it as a staff too, is being realistic with yourself. As a staff, and I remember when I say as a young coach at Denison, you want to run a certain offense. You want you're watching a UVA Duke game, and you're okay, I love the 1-4-1 that Duke's running. Well, yeah, but they have Ned Crotty and Max Quinzani. Everybody loved that 1-4-1. And it didn't mean we didn't have good players, but we didn't have Ned Karate and Max Quinzani. Like, and so it's that idea of, okay, realistically, where am I as a player? Where am I as a coach? What are my tools? What are my strengths? But most importantly, what are my weaknesses? And to be honest with you, the reason kids don't like to work on their weaknesses is twofold. One is they're not confident with it. It doesn't make them feel good. So they're not going to do it. And two is they're definitely not going to do it if they're around other people that are going to see them fail. Like you can't do it. I mean, I struggle with this with my own kids. And the only reason I know to push them through this at such an early age is because I watch it with 18 to 22-year-olds. And my point with it is, if they can do that self-audit that you talked about, that true self-assessment, this is the perfect time to work on those weaknesses because nobody is around. Right. The classic line of like, I became great when nobody was around. When the lights weren't on. That's what right now is. And if a kid's not comfortable now working on that, I don't know that they're ever going to be comfortable with it. But I will say, and it could be an unpopular statement, but I will say that a lot of it falls with the parent as well. For any parent, listening to this, I will say, like, encourage your kid. If your kid's going to go get on the wall, encourage them to work on what they're not good at and be there to support them when they are frustrated by a 30-minute wall ball session that was miserable, because the only way it becomes not miserable is by getting through the miserable stages. And for a lot of kids these days, they need that support piece there to basically remind them, like, you as a human being are not the dropped left-handed pass. You as a human being, are you willing to keep dropping it until you catch it?
Right.
And if a kid can't do an honest self-assessment of where they are, it's really difficult for them. It's really difficult for them to move forward, because they're just going to naturally gravitate to work on what they're good at or what they think they're good at.
Right. Yeah. I mean, people talk about, the lonely hours of sports, and that's essentially what we're living in now. So like you said, take advantage of it. Take advantage of the lonely hours and throw your earbuds in and get to work. That's kind of at the individual level. I want to circle back to, the Family on 3 podcast. I know you just got this going. I listened to the one with Coach Triplett. It's a great listen. Make sure you guys go check it out. But it kind of cores around the idea of being a good teammate, right?
Absolutely.
And I just wanted to get your feeling on it. What is being a good teammate? What does that mean to you? You're always asking all these other people. I want to get your thoughts on it, and maybe bring in some of the thoughts of other folks that you've interviewed as well.
Sure. At my core, being a good teammate is understanding that you're in some capacity always in service of others. And when I talk about it, I really like to look at it actually less from a sports specific standpoint, but the idea of really in so many ways, we're all a part of so many different teams. I talk with my kids all the time about how our family is a team. My wife is the head coach. I'm the associate head coach.
Volunteer assistant
from time to time.
Right.
But that idea of, in everything that you do, if you can have in the back of your head, how does this impact or affect others? You're going to have a positive impact more often than not. And I think any great team that anyone's ever been a part of as a player, a part of as a coach, the best programs out there at all levels have that culture where it's bigger than the individual. We talk to our guys at Denison all the time. Coach Caravan always says, it's bigger than you and it's not about you. And I love that, because I think that if you approach it that way, when you walk on a field, or you walk into an office, whatever it is, if you approach it from the standpoint of, I'm going to do my best and I'm going to make sure that the guy to the left of me and the guy to the right of me are taken care of also, and they're doing the same thing, you're going to find a ridiculous amount of success. And when all the way back when we were talking about how Ohio has handled this pandemic and the quarantining and social distancing and all that, I mean, I've said all the time, like, we're on Team Ohio right now. You know, it's the decisions we make on a day in and day out basis are, you're either being a good teammate or not. You're either doing things for the betterment of the group or not. And it's really, when you boil things down, it's that simple. For all of us who have coached, like, players are either making decisions that help the team or not. It's not complicated. And so, you know, like I said, whether it's, you know, my 8-year-old or a senior captain or the head of our leadership council, or our head coach or our president at Denison, whoever it is, like, I've been fortunate to be surrounded by a lot of people that buy into the idea of being a good teammate.
Yeah, like I said, it's the Family on 3 podcast. It's a great listen. I think you're about to drop episode number 3 or 4. Is that correct?
Yeah, episode 3 will drop this weekend.
Okay, where can everyone listen to this at?
So you can listen to it. You can find it if you search Family on 3 on iTunes or Spotify, and then also you can watch the interviews on YouTube.
Okay, excellent. Well, Coach Stewart, Adam Stewart from Denison University, Stickstar Space Show. I'm Kyle.
Space show, quarantine time, excellent.